Hi guys, my name is Romina and I'm going to be doing my research on why people are not more aware of antibiotic resistance. Probably going to be dealing mostly with the awareness being more about knowledge and how people aren't very educated on what antibiotic resistance is and therefore going to get more prescriptions from doctors, even though doctors, it's more a supply and demand type of deal. But yeah, so it's going to be awareness referring to more of knowing what antibiotic resistance is, as well as what it can affect overall, like in a person, and overall misuse, technically. Alright, so let's get started with this one. No, we're gonna go with this one. This was the first document that I found. Okay, yes. So this was the first document that I found within my research that I said, okay, this will be guiding towards more of antibiotic resistance and overall solutions, but the article mostly talks about like the causes, the consequences, what people do and don't know about it in health systems and as well as people that are taking antibiotics. So there was one instance where it was talking about how many, like the large number of people that are still getting resistance in Europe, but I cannot find it. The number of deaths, I guess, is just alarming, and I guess that's what made me kind of want to go. Oh, here we go. So, an estimated 25,000 people die every year in Europe from antibiotic resistant bacteria, and that's still today, when supposedly penicillin 50 odd years ago was supposed to bring that number down, which it has, but now people are abusing it. So, it becomes a risk of death associated with antimicrobial resistance and all that. That's the first article. And then this one was guided more towards people, like the parents going to doctors and saying, hey, I need this prescription, even though it was just for a common cold. Antibiotics aren't really needed for that. It's more of like bacterial infections, but that goes all the way back to knowledge, why people aren't knowledgeable about what kind of antibiotics they need, and the demand of needing it even though they don't really need it, if that makes sense. Like this quote right here, it says that the results of multi-clinical study would suggest that parents believe that antibiotics are indicated for colds and cough, when that's not true. It says because real or perceived patient demands contributes to inappropriate antibiotic use, educational interventions must involve both physicians and parents. So it's the discussion between physicians and parents that could lead to more knowledge, or it could be, a course with the CDC that it also mentions earlier in this in this article. What else? Okay, so also this is another point. A reduction in antibiotic consumption is likely to reduce the selective pressure, slowing the emergence of resistant organisms. So the more you use and you use a full course of antibiotics, the more you're not going to be as resistant. But if you don't finish the course of the prescribed medication that you're given, you're more likely to develop the symptoms again or develop the disease again if you get it, because it is a bacterial infection. It's treated, it's not curable. So Alright, so that was, this was Mary Jo. And this is her right here. And it just goes back to main topic of knowledge. Here we go, and awareness. I'm not more aware. Aware is so vague, but I'm speaking in the sense of like knowledge. So here we go. This is the third one, antibiotics that resist resistance. So this is more of just like a general article that I can use in my essay of what antibiotics are, what they're used for, um, how it came to be, like the stages of development, how they came up, and then all of a sudden the pharmaceutical industry waking up and saying, hey, like, they ended up being a top person that regulated everything with the FDA along with the FDA, and I thought this would be a good article. See, look, international health officials worry that multi-drug resistance will spread from hospital-acquired pathogens to virulent organisms that cause disease in healthy people. So these drugs are supposed to help you, and going to a hospital, it's nosocomial infections that end up happening, and they become resistant. Like, these bacteria become resistant. And people end up wondering why that happens, and they go back, and it's just a vicious cycle that causes people to keep going back for more, and it just increases the resistance even more. I don't know. Okay, so this was a study in individual children. This one did a study on the use of penicillin and penicillin across European countries, and they studied children and the dose effect relation. They made a strong correlation between antibiotic prescribing and resistance, so they connected it to doctors and their prescribing as well. So this can go back to my topic on about why are people not more aware. It's mostly because of supply and demand again, but it's also because of access to it. And the study shows that these certain countries have high rates of penicillin prescribing, but lower resistance. And then they have more effective strategies to manage antibiotic resistance in community. It's not just to inform care of patients, but also to provide firm estimates for the population model that should inform policy and antibiotic prescribing. So this goes back to my topic on not aware. People keep going back to doctors to get more prescriptions. And there's more microbiology and analysis in here as well. I thought this would be useful, but it's kind of a lot of numbers, so I'm not sure if I'm going to end up using this in the end. But it does go back to my topic, so maybe. Alright, so this is tackling antibiotic resistance. This is just another general article that I can use, and more information on what it is, like the public education, exactly what I'm talking about. Nope. The general public must be made aware of facts concerning the important roles bacteria have in their lives and well-beings, and the precious natures of antibiotics and concomitant importance of using them prudently. That as well. So, I think I will use this because it is useful in just describing what's going on, and just like it's more like an introducing, maybe a quote or two from this article. But now for this one, the patterns of antibacterial use, impact of age, race. So this one I looked up more of from like the food industry side, because it's not just from patient to patient, patient to doctor. It's also involved with the food industry and the food that we eat. Oh. And how that affects different races, different areas like the US compared to Europe, compared to other parts of the world in Southeast Asia. So, same kind of thing. They always say antibacterial drug resistance is a substantial public health threat, resulting in limited options for treatment of infection. So it says with high antibacterial consumption with associated and increased antibacterial resistance. So it's more associated. It's just about surveillance and the features of why certain areas have more compared to others in rural areas. But that's another study that I would like to dive into. I think mostly I'm going to be looking at these two articles because of their length and because of how much information they provide. This one and this one. Because it is more related to, exactly related to the topic I want to go in and steer more towards adults being informed and then going from down the line to their children and their information there and their knowledge there. Okay, so then we went to that. Went through this one. Oh. Did we talk about this one? No. Okay, so childhood infections, antibiotics, and okay, so this one I looked up on the same thing with parental knowledge and them demanding unnecessary antibiotics previously used by contributors to overuse of these agents. So they focused another study on kids and whether their parents go back and their concern, and then also the antibiotic prescription for respiratory tract infections and probably UTIs, because UTI is another thing that is really prevalent with antibiotic resistance. Next, it's another direct correlation in the misuse in children and the knowledge directly. The main point is just that antibiotics are being misused, and not just in certain areas but around worldwide, and we can study specific areas just to show that it is being prevalent. Let's see, 85.2% parents stated that they don't use leftover antibiotics from the previous prescription for the next time without doctor's consult, even though it is recommended that you finish the full course of antibiotics so that it doesn't come back as strong or it doesn't come back at all, and so that you don't need a higher dose, you could say, of certain antibiotics. There's a misconception about that, an indication, the lack of knowledge regarding antibiotic resistance. I think it'd probably be useful to find an article. I don't know if it'll be a peer-reviewed one, but any article of like even a poll that shows like people that know about this topic, because it could also really show, the respond level, or, people discussing it, because if people don't know and these numbers are still big at this age and this rate, it can lead to our post era of antibiotics. And then I think this is my last one. Nope, I think this was the same one. Oh no. Okay, so this one was just if parents act differently, whether they think it's appropriate for their children to use antibiotics or if it's useful, and then this one also is comparing adults with their parents and the misuse of antibiotics in the adults. Yeah, but this one, I saw it and I thought it had good points in it, but it was more like a very general and doesn't really provide too much information. It just provides a lot of tables, which could be useful, but we want to see if that one's useful. Okay, so I think I went through all of my articles and all my sources. Alright, so that's my topic. Thank you.